Hey, Bob,
I need your finger.
recognize this guy?
Need your finger.
Oh,
No, who is that ugly guy? That's in, you know what? That's in that coffee shop, right? Studio
That's the
City,
kitchen cupboard.
huh? Here we go.
Put your computer.
I'd prefer you talk to the top of my head.
Yeah, well, that's a better looking part of your face.
Watch out. I want to fog up your glasses.
Oh my God, look at it. You are so young. How did that happen? You had a facelift. You had a facelift.
How do I get this thing to a smaller head?
Back up a little, buddy.
Do I have to shrink?
And tilt, back up and tilt up. Back up and tilt up.
Back up and tilt up. Gee, I need longer arms.
That's good. Down more.
Tilt down.
That's
Whoa,
good.
Whoa,
Stop.
Oh, the damn thing won't stay.
Now, oh, that's a great view of your ceiling. That's a terrific
Are
view
you
of
guys
your forehead.
filmmakers or what? Okay.
There
Shit.
you go. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, just hunch in.
I think I need a lower chair.
All right. Hey, well, you're here with us. You're here with Robert Vincent O'Neil and Joe Cala, the co-writers of Angel and Avenging Angel. We know that
That's right.
Oh yeah, that. There you go, kind of. So you wrote the idea, and then you sort of gave the script over to.
No.
Oh, Joe did.
No.
Well, tell us.
I was talking some ideas and he was listening. I think we were talking to Sandy Howard or somebody. We were talking to somebody about these ideas about this movie, Angel, about some girl that pretended her mother and father were still alive, but they weren't, or they were gone, and she was supporting herself, going to school during the day, and a high school honor student during the day and a Hollywood hooker at night. That was the premise. And he hears us going over these facts, going over these ideas. And the next thing I know, I don't know, it might have been the same day or the next day, he comes with 8 or 9 pages all typed out. That's how it got started, because Sandy Howard had something he could put in his hand, and he did it. Joe Cala did it. He put it in his hand. And
Well, I did have a lot of help.
yeah,
Since
sure.
Bob was my mentor at the time.
But those first 5 or 6 pages you wrote out, and it was stuff that we talked about, yeah, but you typed it up. I didn't. And we were on our way. And the funny thing about it is that Sandy Howard didn't even know who the hell he was. You remember that? And we went to his apartment, and that's the first time he ever met you and saw you. And I prepared you. I said, this guy curses a lot. Don't pay any attention to it. You remember?
Sandy or me?
Huh?
Or
I
both.
told you, I warned you. I said, Sandy Howard curses a lot. Remember, I told you he's not mad at you. That's just the way he is. And we had that first meeting at his dining room table.
I always loved the way if he didn't say anything, he'd be snapping his fingers. Come on, Cala, wake up, or Bob, wake up.
Yeah. And from that moment, with him typing up 2 or 3 pages, that's how Angel got started. Then we started writing it. And that was a fun thing to write, because we spent all of our time on Hollywood Boulevard. And that's where we got our ideas, seeing people. I think that's how we created the character of that Roy Calhoun played.
Yeah, Sunset.
Yeah,
Sunset. Oh, no, Kit Carson.
Kit Carson. You look good, Joe. You look terrific.
Thanks, Bobby. Top of your head looks good too.
Yeah. Are you playing golf still?
Oh yeah.
This thing just started. Let me call you back, because I gotta say a quick hello, all right?
Who's that?
Okay, bye. What's going on?
What a great pose, Andy.
What the hell's going on? How do I go live? Let's see. Start video.
There he is.
Hey, it's your buddy Andy Davis.
Where's Bob?
Andy, how you doing, kiddo?
All right, just you got to tilt down. You want to lower the frame.
There he is directing.
Yeah.
There you go. Joe,
How you
are
doing,
you?
Andy?
Good to see you, man. Wow.
Same
Were
here.
you in
Wow.
Lucky? Were you
Been
in
a
Lucky?
while.
Were you in Lucky?
Me?
Doing what?
Did you have a part in the movie Lucky?
No, I wish I did.
Oh, because you were around, I think we were shooting. Anyway, hey, Bob O'Neil,
Yeah.
good to see you.
Andy, it's wonderful to see you.
God,
Did we have a good time, huh?
yeah, we had a good time. So
Yeah,
anyway, where are you now? In Arizona?
I am. I'm in Tucson, my hometown.
Uh-huh. Fantastic.
I love it here.
Yeah.
Andy, how did you guys meet? We know that Bob's saying that you worked on Paco, but how did you get together?
Well, it's interesting. I worked on this movie called Lepke with Tony Curtis and Milton Berle, directed by the wild man Menachem Golan. And we shot it. And there was an actor in that movie what was the actor's name? Do you remember, Bob? He was in Paco. He was a friend of Andre's.
Yeah. He ended up going to jail. He ended up in
Oh,
prison.
well, anyway, he played a heavy. Anyway, so he reckoned me as a young cameraman to this Colombian kid who wanted to make a movie based on,
Andre Marquis.
Andre Marquis wanted to make a movie based upon Oliver in Colombia. And so now, Bob, how did you get involved with that script?
Well, it was in Schwab's drugstore, and Andre Marquis with this actor that we can't remember his name.
Danielle Abandano.
Huh?
Danielle? Oh, yeah, okay, never mind. Yeah, go ahead.
And he had a scrapbook, and he showed me the pictures in the scrapbook. And I'm location minded, and I'm looking at this stuff, and I thought, boy, this would be wonderful. But I didn't believe he was doing a film. Everybody in Schwab's is full of bull at that time. And I went home, and I remember my wife saying to me, how was the meeting? And I said, oh, I got some guy that thinks he's going to do a movie in Colombia. I said, don't pay any attention to it. And 3, maybe 4 days later, it was a Friday. I don't know why I remember. It was a Friday, and Andre calls me up, and he says, have you got a passport? And I said, yeah. And he says, we're leaving for Colombia next Monday or whatever. No,
get your shots.
Right. And I said, what? And he said, yeah. And I'm sending a driver for you then. And that's when I saw you on the plane.
Unbelievable. How did he hire? I remember I had to go get about 10 shots before we left on Hollywood Boulevard. And I felt I had cholera for a day or something like that. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. But that's how we got on a plane. And I didn't believe that any of this was happening.
Right.
I hadn't signed a thing. Do you know that? I did not sign a contract, didn't sign anything. Had no idea how much money I was making.
Was there a script?
No.
We wrote the script in the hotel room, right?
Right. We had an idea. You didn't like the idea, and I didn't like the idea that Andre had. We said we'll do it ourselves, and we wrote it ourselves.
Anyway, I want to say this, and I hope I'm not boring everybody else, but going to make that movie as a young cameraman, I got paid $650 a week to I think I was a cameraman, a DP, associate producer, and a co-writer or something. I don't remember what the credit was.
I got paid somewhere around that same amount of money.
Okay, so and I remember that going down there and doing that was like, I was very young, and it was one of the dreams of why you wanted to be in the film business, is because you could see the world and have adventure.
Right.
And it really was that. It was really that.
Do you remember where we went? I do.
I remember going to Cartagena to find equipment. There was no equipment available, and I went to Cartagena.
No, that's later. But in Colombia, in Bogota, we were driven to a house in the suburbs, just a big house.
Yeah.
And the people who owned that house, we were their guests. They fed us dinner. We had a room to sleep in. That was it.
Wow.
So, and then Andre wasn't there. he was in Hollywood or wherever the hell he was, trying to raise money. And on the plane back to Bogota, he meets Pernell Roberts on the plane.
Who's going to do a coffee commercial?
Doing a coffee commercial, right. And he steals 1 day and 1 night from Pernell Roberts for us. We worked our ass off on that. You remember that?
Yeah, it was great. This old opera house that supposedly
Wasn't that opera house beautiful? God, that was great, you know.
Yeah.
And we had planks set up to walk from where the seats were to the stage. And because there was this orchestra pit in there and it was being rebuilt and there was no way to get to the stage. So
Right.
they set up planks for us there.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was great. Anyway, I remember going to Cartagena because there was no equipment, and there was a guy named Julio Lizardo who was the production manager. It wasn't very good. But anyway, so I go there, and Dino De Laurentiis was producing a movie with Bud Spencer and Terrence Hill
Right.
at the time, a Western, a spaghetti Western. And I met Salvo Basile there, who became our assistant director. He's still one of my dearest friends.
Right. You brought him back. I remember
Me.
you brought him back from Cartagena to Bogota.
Right, and the script supervisor I met was named Benedetta, and she was literally married to an Italian prince, and he was raising flowers outside of Bogota, right, and shipping them to Paris and then to Stockholm. And he said to me, the difference, he was a socialist, but he was a capitalist, okay? And he said, the difference between if all the materials are the same and this is the same, it's all about the cost of labor. And he had this inexpensive labor in this great climate he was growing. Anyway, but Paco was a great, great experience for me because it was very exciting. Met some great people, saw some of those beautiful sites. You know, I went back to Villa de Leyva with Salvo a few years ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wasn't that a beautiful little village? Remember that courtyard, that cobblestone courtyard?
I have a lot of pictures. I have to
was
send you.
huge.
I have to send you some pictures. Really,
Yeah.
I have tremendous images. I went back there because they had these beautiful blankets that the women would make, bold striped blankets, and I had one. I wanted another one. I went to the hotel where they had them, and I found one in the laundry room and bought it.
Great. Yeah.
Now, I remember we were shooting the scene with Farrar with the Tejo at night, and the blood sausage was dripping, you know, and anyway, it was great. It was really great.
Well, Farrar was so wonderful to work with. I mean,
Yes.
I'd heard terrible things about it.
Yeah.
And he was a Tony Award-winning director.
Wow.
And I was very nervous about working with him. And then Andre, who had, no backbone, scheduled, this killed me. This really pissed me off. He scheduled the very last scene of the movie to shoot first. Do you remember that?
No.
Well, that's what he did. Jose Ferrer was sitting there with little Paco, and they were licking an ice cream cone waiting for the bus. That was the last scene. So shooting the last scene first did not give us an opportunity to take advantage of what we would discover while we were shooting the rest of the film.
Right.
It was bare bones,
Yeah.
Robert, can you jump ahead and talk about, jumping to Angel, Andy was an established director by then, but he came and shot Angel for you.
Oh
friends.
yeah,
Can
I
you talk
thank
about
God
that?
for it. He was just, I said that Andrew Davis was God. He created light where there wasn't any light. That's what I used to say about you.
Oh God. Well, I learned from Haskell Wexler how to use fast
I know
lenses
you
and
did.
push a stop, But Angel was interesting because I think my wife was pregnant with her first child. And I was transitioning. I was trying to go from being a cameraman to a director, and my first film hadn't really come out yet, or was struggling, and I needed the money, and I got this job with Sandy Howard with you, and once again the cast was amazing.
Right.
With Dick
Sean.
Dick Shawn, who was a genius, and Suzanne Terrell, and who else was in that? The cowboy. Who was the cowboy?
Rory Calhoun.
Rory
Rory
Calhoun,
Calhoun. Yeah.
who I love.
Yeah.
And that script, Joe and I wrote that script, and you want to know something? It was effortless. I mean, you know how writing is difficult, and you sweat over it all, all night long, but it fell together.
Yeah.
It fell together, and what we did is we created another form of the Wizard of Oz. Hollywood Boulevard was the yellow brick road, and Dick Shawn and Rory Calhoun and the girl's name, I can't think of her name.
Donna Wilkes.
Huh?
Donna Wilkes.
No, the other girl.
Susan Taylor.
Yes.
Susan Terrell.
Yeah. They were our Cowardly Lion, our, Scarecrow, and our Tin Man, those three.
Yeah.
And we had Hollywood Boulevard, which was the perfect yellow brick road. And I loved working that picture. I had the greatest time I ever had in my life working.
I have a lot of good photographs of us scouting. Being you late at night on Hollywood Boulevard with all the magazines on the stands.
You know what our biggest problem was? And you were so great at doing this. We were fighting losing dark. Remember that we had a short nights because what was it, summer, short nights?
Yeah.
And you brought out black duvetine and surrounded a close setup with the black duvetine on top and behind us, and created night when it was day. That's why I called you God.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's dangerous.
Let there be light.
Andy Roberts mentioned many times about stealing shots that you guys, didn't really have a permit. You had a little pink piece of paper. And can you talk about?
I know what he's talking about.
Stealing.
Well, on Paco, I almost got killed. We would go out early in the morning, shoot these kids sleeping on the streets, and one kid had these slingshots.
Yeah.
Put your eye out.
The Gaminas.
Yeah, the Gaminas. If they didn't want you to photograph them, we negotiated. Okay, we'll back away. But
Right.
I don't know. I'll tell you, one of the interesting. We'll give you a time setting. While we were shooting Paco, was the big fight between Ali and
Muhammad Ali and Frazier, right?
Now and Rumble in the Jungle. And the Colombians had a welterweight or a lightweight who was like a world champion. And they were so into boxing, but then they didn't have televisions. There was no cable. They all rented rooms in the hotel we were in to watch the fight in Africa. And it was so wild. It was so wild to be there during that time.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Wow. Good to see you, Bob. You look great.
Well, thank you. You look good too, kiddo. I'm so happy to be talking to you.
Yeah.
Andy, how was it working with Steven Seagal?
Which one? Which time? When he was unknown, it was okay. When he was
It was the Under
on
Siege.
Above
I
the
think
Law,
it was.
it was his first movie.
Under Siege.
And what was the one in Chicago? He shot one in
The
Chicago.
one in Chicago was Above the Law.
Yeah,
he was,
Above the Law.
that was a good one.
he was easy to work with then, but I knew he was going to become dangerous when he became a star.
Yeah.
And, and in Under Siege, he's in the movie less than Tommy Lee Jones. He's only in the movie 47 minutes. And I don't know, I haven't spoken to him much since then.
Yeah.
Well, he keeps cranking out
Well,
movies.
the thing is, I take credit for his relationship with Putin because when there's a scene in Above the Law where he says, people, the CIA has slaughtered people, they've killed people in, mass murder. Not one CIA agent has ever been tried, much less arrested for any of the stuff that they've done. You know what I mean? Which was true, and so I'm sure that Putin saw that and said, oh my God, we've got a guy who's critical of the CIA being an action star and he likes martial arts. I got to invite him over to Russia.
I want
And
to
he
tell you,
did.
you did a terrific job with The Fugitive. I was so proud of you on that. That was a terrific picture.
Thank you. You ever see Holes?
Huh?
Did you ever see the movie Holes?
With Shia LaBeouf,
Holes.
And John Voight
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver.
and Patricia Arquette, and even Eartha Kitt's in it.
You
I
did that
I
one.
don't remember.
Yeah,
It was a good movie.
yeah. Anyway, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about Bob O'Neil. So
Steve, where?
Joe, how are you? Joe, how you been? You were the voice of sports in LA for so many years.
Yeah, on the radio. He was terrific.
Would you like some scores?
Yeah.
6-4, 5-2.
You know, I got to tell you a funny story. I was in Panama a few years ago, and I was at Ruben Blades' house, Ruben Blades, right? And he had Louis Aparicio picture in his house. And when I was a kid growing up with the White Sox, which was the era, and I think all these guys have been characters in my movie. Nellie Fox was in Code of Silence, Nelson Fox, you know, and Louis Aparicio, Sherman Lawler, all these Chicago White Sox, Earl Batty. And so anyway, that's, and the big sports thing is when I was a kid, Dick Butkus grew up in my neighborhood. And I wound up waiting on him in college at the University of Illinois. I was a dishwasher, and he was in a fraternity there. And and the Bears had already given him this big Buick Riviera. It was illegal. It was legal to do that crap in those days, you know. And so he was the big guy. And then later on, Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay lived not too far down the neighborhood when he became involved with the Church of Islam. Anyway, so it was interesting.
You remember Muhammad Ali had a sister?
No.
Yeah, she was also a boxer.
Really, his daughter.
His daughter. Huh?
That was the daughter.
His daughter.
Oh, his daughter.
Okay.
Yeah, I sold my house to her.
Really?
Yeah, up in Woodland Hills.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
How are your children?
They're right here with me. I have a daughter here, Nicole.
I remember Nicole.
Yeah.
Hello, Nicole.
Hello.
Good to see you. Since so many. I remember when you were a little kid.
Yes.
Yeah, walking along the Hollywood Boulevard while we were working our butts off. And then I got Laurie is here and Lisa.
Laurie went to get you lunch.
Oh, yeah.
Nicole just got married too.
Congratulations.
She's
Thank
a
you.
new wife, Mrs. Simon.
This is Mr. Simon.
That would be me.
Simon says,
Yeah, exactly.
How you doing?
New father-in-law here.
Great, fantastic.
Didn't realize when I
So,
Googled him, there's 3 pages on Google about him and you didn't realize that.
I've never seen it. He told me I had 3 pages on Google and I didn't know what he was talking about.
What's it? What are the pages about? About your career?
My work,
Uh-huh.
movies I wrote or the movies I directed.
Fantastic. So you say you're still writing. You had some plays you were doing recently.
Yes, I did. I did a play, and I had a writing partner on it. Thank God, called Nighthawks that got rave reviews
Great.
and just did great. I never got I got accused of writing the reviews,
That's
but
funny.
it was great fun doing that. And then, you know, I directed a lot of plays. The most creative experience I ever had in my life is I directed Death of a Salesman with an actor that was the perfect Willie Loman.
Who's that?
His name was, what the hell was his name? I can't think of his name. He also did.
Frederick March.
Yeah. No, he also did a Neil Simon comedy for me, Prisoner of Second Avenue, but I can't think of his name. But he was a fantastic Willie Loman.
Yeah.
And I learned something. This is interesting. You'll be interested in this. How many times have you seen in workshops and in rehearsals the 2 brothers, Biff and Harry,
Yeah.
of a salesman? That's an isolated scene, and you can pull it right out, and you can do it from beginning and end. And it's
Yeah.
done constantly in acting classes,
Right.
constantly. Well, you know what that scene does when you're doing the whole play?
No,
It stops the forward action of the play.
really.
Right. You've got this rhythm, you've got this pace going, and all of a sudden, lethargic. And I tore my hair out doing that scene, you know. And here I am, kind of editing. What was the author's name on that? A very famous playwright.
Arthur Miller.
Yeah. Here I am editing his work and sweating over that. But you have no choice. You've got this wonderful play, everything's going great. You got Willie Loman sitting in the kitchen, just daydreaming, and above him, you got the bedroom of the two boys, and a 20-minute scene.
So let me ask you a question. I just want to take advantage of you. What do you attribute the clarity of your brain and your presence at this stage of your life? You're keeping busy, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I love it. That's the main thing. I love it. It's not work, you know, and it's some way that I work with a writer partner. His name is Dennis Pratt, and we work together on a lot of stuff. And what we do comes out pretty well, and that keeps me going.
Andy, you gotta read, Robert put on a play about 7 years ago called Nighthawks in North Hollywood, and it's fantastic. You gotta read it. It's about these two mob guys in a diner. It's very much like a play, but you've gotta read it. You'd love it.
Yeah.
Two hitmen. It's about two hitmen that meet for dinner in a shitty looking diner. One of the guys picked the diner, right?
Who pays the tab?
What?
Who pays the tab?
Who played in it? Is that what he said?
He said, who pays the tab?
Who pays the tab?
I was being funny.
No. Very interesting question. A hell of an interesting question. The entire cast, including the girl, is in a shootout, and they kill everybody. They each kill everybody
Oh, great.
in a final shootout.
And the first thing you see on stage is the death of everybody getting killed in the restaurant.
Right.
And then everybody gets up off of the floor and they sort of rewind back to the beginning, and you see, it's like a Tarantino, you see how that end result.
Why that happened.
I like.
You see all these dead bodies on the stage. That's what the lights open on. And wonder how the hell did they get there? And
And
anyway,
and the hitman has the waitress is one of the hitman's daughters, right?
Yeah.
Is the hitman's daughter, and she doesn't know it's his father, and he's trying to like get to know her, but not tell her. It's really good.
Anyway, we got rave reviews on it. I got reviews like I never got in my life on it.
Wow, great.
And it was scheduled to run 3 weeks at this theater in North Hollywood, and it ran something like 16 weeks.
Well, so can you make it turn it into some kind of a video?
Yeah, it can be turned into a film. It has a couple of problems, but they could be solved. And, but it can be. It's highly stylistic.
That's great.
I mean, there's a comedy scene where one of the guys orders coffee.
Yeah.
Right? No, the key is that the waitress knows what coffee they want before they ask for it. She says decaf to this guy. And he said, yeah. And he says, how do you know I want a decaf? And she says, I just know. And there's a very funny scene that follows with that.
Yeah.
You know.
All right.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do. And I learned a lot on that play.
That's great. That's great. So is your whole family in Arizona with you?
Most of them. I have a daughter back home in LA. That's about it.
Right. And you, I remember you telling me stories about you were going around taking baby pictures. That's how you learned something when you were a kid?
Yeah, I used to be what they called a kidnapper.
Right.
And I had a kid who would go down the street knocking on doors saying, we got a portrait photographer coming down the street, give your kid a bath, dress him up, and he'll take a free picture.
Oh, wow.
And it's called kidnapping, and that's how I earned my living. And I became a portrait photographer out of that. And so I knew how to light people, and I had a bulb that you squeeze that trips the shutter.
Yeah.
And on a long hose, I could walk anywhere with it, and I'd have that bulb behind my back so they would never know when I was taking a picture.
Wow.
Yeah, so I became a portrait photographer, and that helped me with lighting. I knew how to light, using a key light and a fill, and using a tiny little hair light and a hair light. Yeah. And then I went to work in a TV studio, and I learned how to light sets in a TV studio, and I learned how to operate a TV camera.
So where did the writing start? When did the writing start? When did you start being a writer?
Oh, when did I start being a writer? Because that was not an easy thing. Oh, I had an idea for a film, and I told the idea to a secretary for Sandy Howard. Do you remember that name?
Yeah, sure.
He was a producer, and he was in Africa.
Don Brochure? Don Brochu? Was it Don Brochu?
Or Borchers.
Who was it? Don Borchers. Don Borchers.
Don Borchers, right. And so she called him up and she said, "You've got to hear this story." And he hired me on the spot.
Wow.
And then and this guy was very cheap, Sandy Howard. He was known to be so cheap.
Right.
When I turned in the script, I got $1,000 bonus or a $5,000 bonus. Everybody said that's unheard of. You know,
Wow.
and then I did 4 or 5 pictures for him. I did Vice Squad. That turned out well. I did 2, 3 movies with Wings Hauser. And I don't
Was this as a writer, director, or both?
First as a writer, which really pissed me off. I wanted
Right.
to direct them. And then I wrote Angel, and Joe Cala. We had ideas about that. One time, I had an office above Tiffany's Theater, and Joe and I would go out for lunch. He'd come by and I'd take a break and go to lunch. And I was writing for Sandy Howard. He had me under contract, $500 a week.
Wow.
And I was writing for him. So we would take off, and we saw this girl on Sunset Boulevard, hitchhiking by Hollywood High School, wearing Levi's and a white t-shirt with a pack of Marlboro cigarettes rolled up in her t-shirt, in her cuff, you know?
Right.
And the next day we go for lunch, and there she is again. And the next day we go there, and there she is again. So we start making up a life for her, right? And that's how Angel started. A girl who didn't have a mother, and the father was gone, and she pretended her mother was sick, right? And that was the hokey nobody ever saw. When somebody came by to collect the rent, she would go in the room and write out the check and come out of her mother's room and give the check to the landlord. Nobody ever saw the mother. She didn't exist. So you had a 15-year-old girl who was a high school honor student in the daytime and a Hollywood hooker at night. And you never saw her take her clothes off. You never saw her go to bed with anybody. She never cursed, and she never kissed anybody. And how that worked, I don't know.
That picture was sort of one of the early successes for New World Pictures, I think.
I think it was the first one.
It put New World on the map. Yeah.
What, Joe? What did you say, Joe?
It was the first movie for New World. It was
Right.
like rebooted.
Right.
It was the first one.
Yeah. And whatever happened to that company? Did they get turned into Filmways or something like that? Or
They got chewed up somehow. You would have thought that Angel would have sent them, it was such a success, but they didn't follow through with it.
yeah.
But we did do a sequel and called Avenging Angel. And again, how producers think. Donna Wilkes, the girl who played Angel, wanted $1,000 more, and he wouldn't pay it. Stupid.
Yeah.
Because she
We
was
cast a lovely girl, Betsy Russell, lovely girl, but not the soul, the depth that Donna Wilkes had. But still, she was pretty, and we made it work.
well, to me, the iconic scene and the one I most remember and really liked was her running down Hollywood Boulevard with a 357
Yeah.
and high heels.
Donna Wilkes running down the middle of Hollywood Boulevard with a .44 pistol, with that long barrel, blowing the hell out of people on the way down.
Jesus.
Were you there? We screened a picture in New York. Were you there at that screening? Weren't you there
No.
at that screening?
No.
Oh.
No.
Anyway, she goes running down the street, blowing people away, and the whole audience, which was all black, stood up and cheered. and I remember I was really worried. I was worried sick about the production because people kept getting up out of their seat, going and getting popcorn and getting candy or whatever, a soda pop to drink. It was a constant parade up and down those damn aisles. And I'm sinking down into the chair as the movie's going on. I'm thinking, oh God, this thing is a failure. What am I gonna do and everything? And at the end of the movie, I get a phone call from Sandy Howard. He's in France somewhere. And I said, they all walked out of the theater. What do you mean they all walked? They were getting candy, ice cream, soda pop. Nobody stayed to watch the movie. And you know, there's notes that they make after a screening.
Sure.
And he said, you got the notes there? And I said, yeah. And he said, read a couple of them to me. And I did. And he said, we got a hit. Sit down, don't worry about it.
Yeah. No, they were. That's what the theater owners wanted, to pay a lot of money for popcorn, whether they sit there or not. You know?
Yeah.
High grosses.
Only I didn't know that, and I'm sinking down into the chair. I don't want anybody to know I had anything to do with this movie. And I remember saying, the guy asked me, where do you want to sit? We reserved seats for you, right? In the back.
Yeah.
Right. I said, no, I want to sit down in the audience. I want to feel the audience, what they're feeling, right? I want to be there. And I was wilting as the picture went on and on with these people getting up and leaving and coming back and forth. I thought, oh.
You know, it's interesting. I want to tell you, there's another connection that because of you I had, which is very interesting. After the guy who cut Paco was Gene Ruggiero, right?
Fabulous editor,
Yeah.
very experienced, Gene Ruggiero.
Yeah. Anyway, so he had a buddy named Lou Damiani.
Huh?
Lou Damiani, was a former cop from Trenton, a big Italian guy. He was a war hero, but also got thrown in the brig. And so Lou Damiani and I met through Gene Ruggiero. And Lou Damiani had a caper going on in Morgantown, West Virginia, where Lou Damiani came out to California. He was in the sheriff's department, and he was a decent guy. And he walked in, and these guys were beating up these Mexican guys, and said, "What are you doing that for?" Right? Yeah. So immediately they didn't trust him. And the guy who had hired him was this Italian lieutenant who we liked. Anyway, he didn't last long with the sheriff's department. He became a private detective, and he would help old ladies who were getting screwed by insurance companies, right? And part-time, he became a used car salesman. He's on this used car lot, and there's this guy who says, "Lou, we got to go back to West Virginia because we can buy some coal land and make a lot of money." So they go back to West Virginia, and they find this kid named Ronald Harrington Jr., who had inherited 350 acres of coal land from a family that had adopted him. He and his brother were adopted. And the local crooked attorneys, and Louis called them a guinea rednecks because he was Italian, they screwed him out of this land. And Lou found out about it, right? So he said, just a minute. And he backdated a contract. So he was a part of Plantation Coal and Land Company with this guy, Ronald Harrington, so that he could go after the guys who had screwed him, right? And he would show up, and he was such a character. We go to LAX, and he'd give the guy, in those days, you know, the kid gave you a ticket for your bags, right? He said, "Here's an extra $20, give me an extra ticket." Well, then the trip was over, he'd say, "They lost my bag," and get the money to pay for the trip, $1,000 for the stolen bag, right? For the lost bag from the airline. Anyway, he was a character. So long story short, I did a documentary called Steal Big, Steal Little, because there was a line in this doc, it was an old 3/4-inch video machine that was owned by Powell Peralta, the guy who makes skateboards, you know? Mm-hmm. And I shot this documentary, we cut it, and it was like going to be for 60 minutes, you know? Anyway, it was a very funny documentary about Lou trying to take on these crooked guys and the system being all corrupt and how they screwed this guy, you know? So years later, after The Fugitive, I could do anything I wanted, right? And I made the movie. I took that story and moved it to Santa Barbara, and I cast Alan Arkin as Lou Damiani. And Andy Garcia is the one of the two twin, both twin brothers who got screwed out of the land.
Yeah, I think I saw that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so that all came out of Paco. I wouldn't have had I not met Ruggiero in that story and had made Paco. So it's amazing how things keep spinning out. And Salvo, who I met on Paco, was in the movie, and he's you know, and my son got engaged on his island off of Cartagena.
Off of Cartagena?
Yeah, that's where Salvo lives, in Cartagena. And his family has an island. So his wife's family has a little island resort off the coast there. So anyway, so it had a big impact on my life. And you know, and then I did another movie with Schwarzenegger called The Collateral Damage, and it's all based upon FARC in Colombia.
Wow.
Because they originally was about the Middle East, and I said, no, I don't want to do another Arab bashing movie, and we did it set down there.
You know, when I came back from Bogota, I met this guy. His name was Chris Christensen. I don't know how I met him. I forgot. But anyway, he hired me, paid me $10,000 to write a screenplay. This is the one time in my life where I was working for two people. I also worked for Sandy Howard, also paying me $10,000 to write a screenplay.
Right.
But this Chris Christensen was some kind of auto guy. He put on big auto shows, and that's why he was so wealthy, why he had so much money. And he buys a yacht, a 48-foot Chris Craft yacht.
Yeah.
And he has it in New Haven, Michigan, on the lake there.
Yeah.
And he has me up in a hotel, I forget, the Holiday Inn or something like that, where the top of the hotel goes around in a circle. And I'm writing. I'm writing for him, and I'm writing for Sandy Howard. And and I watch outside the window that he's taking his boat out of dry dock and putting it in the water. And 3 or 4 days after he does that, he explodes into my room. He says, "Get your stuff together. I'm selling my boat." I said, "Okay, what's that got to do with me?" He says, "We're going to Memphis, Tennessee to sell the boat." I said, "Oh, okay." And I get my typewriter, a portable Smith Corona. I get the script I'm writing for him. I get the script I'm writing for Sandy Howard. I put those in plastic bags, and I board that boat. This is in New Haven, Michigan, on the lake.
How do you get from New Haven, Michigan, down to Memphis?
There's this community on the lake, Lake Michigan. We sailed across Lake Michigan, down the Ohio River, down the Chicago River, down the Mississippi River, 2,000 miles to Tennessee, I think.
Memphis.
Memphis, you're right. And it was the adventure of my life.
Huh.
I've never had anything like that. That was incredible.
It was a power boat, not a sailboat, right?
Yeah, a 48-foot dual gasoline operated power ship sailing all the way down the Mississippi River. And I can tell you why there are not pleasure boats sailing down the Mississippi, because we did it, and nobody should do it. It was one of the adventures of my life, you know. Yeah. And I wrote a screenplay that never got made, got paid for it. And then I wrote a screenplay that did get made for Sandy Howard that starred Wings Hauser. I can't remember. Vice Squad. Right. So that was successful. And by the time I got down to Newport or Tennessee, wherever I was, Memphis, I get a phone call that my wife, who was pregnant, was having a baby.
Wow.
And I had to fly home, and she miscarried, and it was, you know, a stillborn.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that adventure.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Arizona permanently? Because when did you leave LA?
This is my home state, Arizona. I grew up in Tucson right now, and I love it. I do. I wish I could live here. And I'm visiting Tucson.
Ah.
I live in LA.
So home is still LA.
Yeah, so the last place in the world anyone should want to live is LA.
Hey,
Huh?
cut that out.
I love Tucson, and I had great childhood memories of Tucson.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a story of what we used to do in Tucson. We were so movie crazy. I'm in high school, 16 years old. And what, two other guys, my friends, and I, when we were out of high school, when school was over, went down to the freight yards, and we hopped a freight, a Santa Fe, what's the other freight? Southern Pacific. We hopped a Santa Fe freight to Phoenix, and then a Southern Pacific freight from Phoenix to LA. And then we hitchhiked and took buses up to Hollywood Boulevard to go to Grauman's Chinese Theater and also to get an Orange Julius, which at that time was the only place you could get that.
Uh-huh.
I must have done that a half a dozen times.
Wow. You've really been a hobo. You've been a hobo at heart.
At heart, a real hobo. And we wore white coveralls over our clothes to keep our clothes clean. And then and at the train yard, we found a place behind the train station that janitors used, and we hid our coveralls there. Wow. So when we went on to go back to Tucson, we had something new we could wear over it.
Robert, tell them the Angel connection though. That's where you saw, like, when you went to Hollywood Boulevard to see the movies there, you saw like a Hopalong cast. Those were the first original seeds of. Yeah.
In Angel, I don't know if you ever saw the film. There's a character called Kit Carson.
Oh yeah, I saw it.
And he wears a leather fringe jacket, Western jacket, and a cowboy hat.
Rory Calhoun. And
he's got 2 6-shooters in there. Well, when I was 15, 16, and 17 years old, I told you me and 2 other guys would hop a freight to LA, to Hollywood Boulevard. There was a cowboy there in front of Grauman's Chinese Theater with that leather fringe jacket and the 2 guns. And that's where I got the idea of that character. He was for real.
Yeah.
And he would sign cards that had his photo on them.
Yeah.
And the tourists would give him like $1 and he'd give them the signed card. He was for real, and that's where that character came from.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever worked for him, with him, Rory Calhoun.
Oh, he was in Angel.
Yeah. He was a sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah, I was there. I was the cameraman.
Right. Remember, and what is he, 70 years old? He never dropped a line. He was always ready. He never fouled a scene up.
Yeah.
Ever. He was a great guy.
Yeah.
And I just adored him.
Yeah.
And then we had that scene in Angel where he's supposed to draw these guns and shoot these mannequins. Remember? And he's shooting long barrel 44s, single action. You can't just pull the trigger.
Right.
You have to cock it back and pull the trigger. And he did that like rapid fire.
Wow.
He blew us away with that.
Yeah. So Jason Rutherford.
Yes.
How do you connect it to this artist here?
Well, I've been doing a documentary called Masters of the Grind for about 14 years now. I started maybe about 2005, I guess, and I was going to the New Beverly Cinema to Brian Quinn and Eric Hayden were hosts of this Grindhouse Film Festival, and they were showing these double features, and they had these guys come down and they were telling these war stories about how they were getting screwed over by distributors and how they were making movies with no permits and how they were just mortgaging their house, losing their wives to make. I went, wow, these movies, as much as I love these movies, the stories behind the movies are really fascinating. And this was pre-cell phone, and someone needs to document this now. So I asked Brian and Eric if I could, bring in a camera and start filming the Q&As. And even during Tarantino's 2007 lead up to Grindhouse, they showed Wonder Women, which is a great film that Robert directed with Ross Hagen and Nancy Kwan on a double bill with The Female Bunch, which is a Al Adamson movie. And he came down there and I just got his info, and then I filmed him and Ross at the theater. And since I started this movie, we've lost like, honestly, like 40 people that have been in the documentary. John Bud Cardos, who worked with Robert in the Easy Rider days, he just passed, and Ray Dennis Steckler. But a lot of these guys, it's fun. You're in a real, being one of the greatest cinematographers of all time, you're in a real great club, because Vilmos Zsigmond, he started off making Grindhouse movies. Vilmos shot Wild Guitar and The Incredibly Strange Creatures for Ray, and Laszlo helped on a lot of that too.
So what does the term grindhouse literally mean?
Well, the term grindhouse was literally, Michel Levesque pretty much sums it up the best, that they were making these movies, they were grinding out these movies, so they'd play the drive-in circuit and disappear forever. So
Now, just a minute, hold it. You just mentioned the name Michel Levesque. How do you know Michel?
Michel is in the documentary, and he directed two of the greatest grindhouse movies ever made, Werewolves on Wheels, which is essentially a biker film, obviously, and Sweet Sugar, which is one of the best women in prison movies ever made.
All right, so Michel Levesque is my wife's ex-husband.
No shit.
Adrienne Levesque became Adrienne Davis, and we met on a film I shot for Jonathan Kaplan called what was it? It was Orion's first picture, Over the Edge.
With Matt Dillon?
Yeah,
Tim Hunter?
yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
That was the first film I shot as an IA cameraman after fighting to get in the union. I'd already made Stony Island, my first film, and I actually checked the answer print while we were in Denver shooting Over the Edge. But Michel Levesque was a guy who was in theater, and Adrienne met him at Northridge. That's amazing. So he directed and Adrienne, I think, was Michel brought Adrienne for Werewolves on Wheels, I believe, and the food was no good. He said, well, my wife can do the cooking. And he sent her off to Vegas or something to buy food for these Hell's Angels, and it had to be good.
Oh my God.
I got to tell her this. Amazing.
Yeah, and then he, well, before he directed, he was doing like art direction, and then he got into directing, and then he went back into
Production design.
production design.
He worked with Dennis Hopper on that film about the Indians in Peru.
Yeah, and he also worked with Adrian Lyne on Foxes, and a ton of people, and before working on his films, and after he worked on Russ Meyer, actually worked on Russ Meyer's last 4 films.
Really?
You mentioned Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
You're going to Peru. Before he went to Peru.
Oh, the last movie. Did you say that?
Last movie. Yeah, Michel worked with Leon Erickson on that.
Wow.
Right. But before he went to work on that movie, he was working on a film called Easy Rider. And I was part of that. And we of that Easy Rider crew with Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper.
What were you doing on that film, Bob?
A lot. I was production manager.
What?
Location scout. We fired the prop man because he didn't know what to do, and I took that over.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life doing that. And Peter Fonda was one of the sweetest men that I've ever met in my life. He was he was fabulous.
Yeah.
And we started in Flagstaff. I started in Flagstaff. They started at the LA airport.
Right.
And Paul Lewis, the production manager, fired the prop man and the set dresser both, and called me up and said, "Can you do this?" And I said, "Sure." I just finished the picture, and I said, "I'm leaving tonight for Flagstaff." So I started in Flagstaff with them, and we shot all the way across the United States to Memphis. One of the greatest experiences of my life.
Now, is Paul Lewis still alive?
I don't think so. Did you know Paul? Did he work?
Oh yeah, he was friends with Adrienne because he used to hire her all the time. And I would go to see foreign films on Sunday mornings with my ex Mary, and we would always see Paul Lewis and his wife.
He was a wonderful production manager because if he trusted you, he left you alone.
Right.
You know, he wasn't a pain in the ass. You just did your work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And no, he was a wonderful guy. I really liked him. And then through him, I got Easy Rider, and I met Peter and Dennis, and Dennis was an experience to meet, and Peter was a great, wonderful thing to me. I mean, he was just a pure gentleman.
Yeah. Well, listen, I have to go take care of my granddaughter,
Well, that's a pleasure.
but
How old is she?
yeah. So Jason, will you send me Bob's email?
Of course, of course.
And Joe's also. Joe, good to see you.
Same here, Andy. Good to see you.
I'm sorry I didn't get to hear. I want to hear what you got to say.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you this: without him, Angel would never have been done, and Avenging Angel would never have been done. He's a great partner to write with.
Well, he gave-
I can't tell you how many laughs we had. We were laughing all the time, and we weren't writing a comedy.
That's great. That's great. Okay. Well, listen, stay healthy, and
Thank you.
when are you going to be back in California?
In a couple of days,
Okay. Well, keep in touch. All right.
I will. I will.
Jason, do you say that you have film on Michelle that's available?
I do. I could definitely send you it. You know, and Michelle even made these sort of like videos or like plays too that I have as well. If you want to see those as well, I just send you everything I have on him. Do you have any still photos of him, of Michelle?
Oh yeah, lots.
Because there's not one still photo on record. It'd be great to cut to him. He was
Oh yeah, you send me the stuff and I'll send you some.
guy. What a
We have
nice
a-
guy.
We have a
Send me the, you should talk to Adrienne. She knows all about, the whole history. She worked on all those films.
I was going to say on the photo tip, if we could even like maybe borrow one or two of those scouting photos, that'd be great too with Robert. You mentioned scouting photos.
Oh yeah, okay. Well,
Awesome.
send me what you want, and I'll try to get to it in a decent amount of time.
Do you still live in Santa Barbara?
Oh yeah,
Yes, same address and phone number?
yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a call. We'll talk again.
There's a great filmmaker, another Grindhouse filmmaker turned sort of studio filmmaker lives in Santa Barbara as well. William Deere. Do you know who that is?
Oh dear, yeah, I've met him.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He did Northville Cemetery Massacre, and then went on to do like Harry and the Hendersons. But yeah, he's lives in Santa Barbara, has a ranch, and him and his son created a Western town in their backyard, and they're going to film a whole movie, and him and his son are going to play all the parts.
The only movie I worked on like that as a filmmaker, I got hired by Samuel Arkoff's son-in-law, Joe Roth.
Oh yeah.
to do a film
Sam
called
Markoff, right.
a film called The Final Terror. It was written by Ron Shusett, who wrote Alien later, right? And it was a story about the rich girls and the poor boys going off into the woods together. And Joe Pantoliano played the bus driver and later the monster. And it was with Rachel Ward and Daryl Hannah and Adrian Zmed. And and I shot it under the name of Andreas Davidescu because I was in the union and I couldn't do a non-union movie.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
Well, check out The Final Terror. I don't know if you find it. The opening sequence I didn't do because I was invited to Deauville to with Stony Island, and Joe Roth wanted to add some more terror to the beginning. So he hired his editor to direct the sequence, which I didn't think was very good anyway. So I sued him through the Directors Guild because they didn't have the right to do that, and it paid for my wedding, $5,000.
Wow.
Anyway, good seeing you, everybody.
So much.
Bye, Andy.
Take it easy.